Okay, the recording has started. Good evening, everyone. The today's session will be just the practical demo on how to build chatbots. So I expect that whoever is here had the opportunity to overview the walkthrough and to get familiar with the main concept. Even if you didn't completed the walkthrough, you are already familiar with the concept because we are going to go actually in the practical side where you already know the main concept. Elena is going to do this today. So Elena, with no more, start talking.
Yeah. So here is an agenda. Well, you're gonna get a little bit reminder what the chatbot is and the chatbot expected benefit. Key chatbot terminologies, that's gonna be, well, let's say rather application of key chatbot terminologies to develop the BMI chatbot application. Okay, and along the way, I'll show you some tips and tricks and question and answers. But first of all, I like to have some important reminders. You want to make sure that your IBM Cloud account is active. I think some of you may need to get a new code. All right. If you have less than 30 days remaining, please do. Do not enter your credit card information into your IBM Cloud account. Okay. So do not submit any ticket unless we instruct you. Do not deactivate your IBM Cloud account. So now you want to complete your chatbot self-assessment, right? And I have a way to see who has not. Now, the chatbot walkthrough has some required ungraded exercises, and I need you to do the whole document in order. Do not advance to page 5 until the exercise on page 4 is complete, okay? So, for assignment 4, whatever chatbot you developed, it must be your original work. It could be something related to your hobby or something like that. You want to pay attention to assignment deliverables because there are 2 files. One of the files is a JSON file, and if that file is missing, your work cannot be graded. That's it. Now, remember that the deletions, anything you delete cannot be undone. If you delete the Watson assistant, well, formerly Watson Conversation Service, that's it. It's gone, and you're going to lose your work. So, unless you export the Dialog as a JSON file, if you export the Dialog skill as a JSON file, then you have a backup, right? And you can always re-import it. And this is a good one. The only mistake you can make is not asking for help. So just remember this quote, okay? All right. So this is just a little definition. The chatbot is a system that understands the language and it has an intelligence in a certain area of context, right? So in our case, it's going to be the BMI and the blood pressure, right? That's going to be the area. So now this is a little bit of some chatbot use cases that you can look at your leisure. I just have it in there, and you're going to have a copy of the slides, right? And some of the benefits, how it can save money, and it's a personalized service, and it also saves the company resources because they don't need to hire people to handle some of the questions that the chatbot can answer, right? So if you look at this slide over here, you could see this. This are the expected benefits from the chatbot. If you can see this is a 20-hour service as a top one. Then you get a quick answers to simple questions. You can get instant response. You don't need to wait. It's very convenient. And it's very easy to communicate, right? So that's the main, right? And then the friendliness comes at the end, but you got the main point, right? So this is a brief summary. So it's a brief summary about what the chatbot is. They're also known as a software agent or a bot or the virtual agent. Those synonyms, right, refer to the same concept. In this course, you're going to use Watson Assistant Service in the IBM Cloud to build the chatbot. You're going to develop some small application. It's going to be in your area, in your subject of interest, and it might not be able to handle, it might not be working like 100% perfectly as expected, but it's just to show the concept, right? Your goal is to show the concept. And these are the steps that you're going to follow. And I'm going to walk through the steps, right? So the high level steps today. You're going to define the purpose of your application. You're going to develop some scenarios, right? And you're going to build the flow diagram, and I'll show you what that is. You will build the flow diagrams on your scenarios. You're going to use the Watson Assistant to implement your chatbot, and you're going to train your chatbot to understand the language, to understand what questions people are asking in a certain area, right? Then this piece right here, you're not actually going to do it, but you're going to pretend as if you were doing it. Probably for your discussion for this last 3 weeks, you may have looked at the other services already, such as visual recognition, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, right? So imagine that you are trying to integrate other services on a cloud just to add value to your application, right? And here, well, you're going to pretend that you're going to deploy an application, right? You're going to discuss, and see, this is let's look at the big picture. So you have some type of a backend, right? Well, in this case, you don't have a database, but normally you would, right? You're gonna have your conversation service, and the service has something called a workspace, and it was renamed as a dialogue. It's a skill dialogue, right? So basically, you have something like a workspace. You have some users, right? And here is basically an interface. So yeah, looks like somebody has a camera. Would you mind please turn it off just to save the bandwidth? All right, so, and then you have some kind of like an interface to interact with users. In our case, we're gonna do the preview link, but you can also do the Slack, Facebook, and so on, right? So just think of it, this is a big picture, right? And of course, you're going to monitor your conversation, and you're gonna identify the limitations of current application to suggest the future build. But I'm going to tell you right away, one of the limitations of what we're going to do today is that the information that a user enters will not be stored. The information will not be stored, okay? So it would be nice to store it and then to come back, and so that the chatbot could recognize perhaps your last week blood pressure readings and so on, right? But that's not what we're going to do, right? So let's see. What is a BMI chatbot application mission? A user who runs this application may estimate the body mass index based on height in inches and weight in pounds. So instead of spending hours researching the web for a formula, right? The user can just plug in the numbers and get an answer, bang, immediately, right? So unless your blood pressure readings, the same thing, unless you require medical attention, you don't need to see a doctor. You just type in your readings and it's going to tell you what that means. If your blood pressure is normal, if it's elevated, and so on. And this application, you don't need to pay for it. It's 100% free, except on my account, I have a little bit limit on the number of API calls per month. But other than that, it's free. You don't need to buy a health insurance to use my application. Your results will be confidential. And also, this is very important, it's consistent. So if I enter that my blood pressure is 115/75, I'm gonna get an answer, my blood pressure is normal. If Lanesh enters the same blood pressure, he's gonna get the same response, blood pressure is normal, right? So that's what I mean by consistency. So in the doctor's office, we have 3 doctors. One doctor is Mr. Monitor, and this is the hours when the doctor works. And this is Miss Stethoscope, and this is Mr. BMI. So my whole idea here is that when you launch the application, you're gonna get a greetings. And the greetings is gonna have a picture of a doctor. And the pictures that you see will be driven by the time of the day when you launch an application. And this is a menu that you will see, right? This is an application menu. This is how it starts. So when I launch the application, I expect to see a greeting, a picture of one of this doctor, and a menu. This menu tells me what I can do, which is estimate BMI, find out what BMI is, find out what my blood pressure readings mean, what is blood pressure, and I can request an application to email me the information, and I can exit, right? So what I do next, I write down the scenarios. Of course, you're not gonna have this piece right here, but I just put in the pictures afterwards. Okay, so this is a menu. I select the estimate BMI, what's gonna happen, right? That's what you're gonna do in your assignment. You're going to describe. If I select an estimate BMI, the application is gonna ask me, hey, what's your height in inches? I type my height as 60, right? Now, this is a number. I can type a number, and the application should still recognize it. Or I can type I'm 60, and it should recognize 60 in the sentence that I type. All right. So then it's asking me for my weight. I'm 115 pounds, right? Well, that's true. So here it's telling me your BMI is 22, healthy weight, right? So that's the whole idea. I'm entering two numbers, and there is a formula behind the scenes that calculates the BMI, right? So what happens if I enter an invalid number? It's gonna reprompt me, right? So you have to start asking yourself these questions. When you start developing it, first do for the perfect scenario. Elena enters correct number, bang, I got my answer, right? Later on, you have to start adding to it. Think about what am I gonna do? How am I gonna handle invalid input? Things like that, right? Now, this is the next scenario. Well, actually, that's the same. It continues, right? Here it is. So this is what's going to happen. You select the blood pressure from the menu, you enter it. The application prompts to enter this. Oh, this is another scenario, sorry, blood pressure. Before that, we talked about BMI. Now we're going to talk about blood pressure. Same concept. I'm going to enter the systolic blood pressure, that's a high reading, right? In diastolic blood pressure, that's a blood pressure at work, the low reading. So if I put 115/75, that's normal, right? Ultimately, I can enter the sentence, right? But it will try to grab the number in the sentence. So this is a valid response. But if my systolic blood pressure is over 180, or if my lower reading is over 120, that's an emergency. That's called a hypertensive crisis. That's it. I should be able to quit immediately, and the application should tell me, hey, Yelena, you have to go to the emergency now. That's it. That's a plan, right? And if it's very low, you should see the doctor immediately. The application should quit. That's my business rule, right? Then I have the other two scenario. I can ask what is BMI, and it's supposed to give me this picture over here, and it should give me the definition, right? Same thing. I can ask what blood pressure is, and it should show me an explanation and this chart, right? So maybe you have a user who has no idea what the bot is talking about, right? So there is an option. Next option is to quit, of course, right? So, and another option is to email me the information. Email me the information. That's an interesting one, because what's going to happen is you're supposed to enter your email, and the bot is supposed to recognize if the email is entered is valid. By valid, I mean in the valid format, right? So here I put my UMC email. That's it. And then see this. The information, the bot reads my email. Well, I did not capture it on a screenshot, but the bot should say the information about BMI and blood pressure will be sent to your email, and then it displays the email address that I entered. But if I enter some email that is not in the email format, it's going to tell me, hey, please enter the valid email, something like that, right? So that's my description of what I'm doing. And then, of course, the exit. I can click on the exit in the menu, or I can just type exit. I'm gonna exit. Another chance, another situation when I can exit, when I enter dangerously low blood pressure, right? When I have a dangerously high blood pressure, that's it. Game is over, right? Or I can exit while I'm in the middle of a certain scenario. For instance, it's asking me about the blood pressure and I get tired. I just don't want to continue. I can exit. At any time I can quit. So that's the whole thing. Now, here it is, conversation flow diagram. Are you gonna draw one of these for your chatbot? But before you do that, you have to brainstorm the scenarios, right? So here it is. The doctor on duty greets you, right? Then here I've got the menu. And based on what is selected, what's going to happen next, right? But before you can do this, you have to really do what I just showed you. You have to think through the scenarios. Like if I select goodbye, if I select I want to information to be emailed to me, or if I select I want to estimate my BMI, right? I should be prompted to enter my height and weight, right? And on the other hand, if I select the blood pressure, then I should be prompted to enter the readings, right? Now, I can tell you upfront, there is a limitation in here, assumption that I'm gonna use the inches and pounds, right? Currently my application does not support the kilograms and centimeters. It does not support that metric system, right? The assumption, it has to be inches, right? And pounds. So that's a limitation, because in a future release, I could let the user choose the metric, not now, not at the moment. Now, here comes the fun part. Remember the vocabulary that you were supposed to study for today, right? A skill, it's also known as a workspace. So when we develop our conversation, we have sort of like a container where we have and I'll show you example of what it is in this case. You have our entities, we have our intents, entities, and a dialogue inside that specific container. And Yelena make the spelling errors. This is not JSON, it's JSON. I'm gonna correct it before you get a copy of slides. There is a JSON, it's stored it's a JSON file. Internally, the structure is stored in a JSON file. So I created the skill, and I called it the BMI Health Center, and I added the description. Language is English, right? And this is a menu. Well, I can jump in here and show you. I'm gonna be going between slides and between applications. So see this here? I have two skill sets. This is a BMI Health Center. And let me show you what you need to submit for grading. Before I forget, look at this. I click on this triple dot, and you need to click download JSON. This is what you're gonna do. And it's going to save, this is a file. I'm not gonna save it now, but it's gonna, this is a file that you need to submit for your assignment, right? And your instructor, the instructor will do this. She will click on the create new, right? And then she's gonna do import skills, and she's gonna download your JSON file from your assignment folder, and will do this, choose JSON. And then she will import the file that you turned in, right? And will actually play around with your dialogues that you submitted. I'm gonna cancel it. But while I was on that screen, I want to show you what's gonna happen when you turn in and how your work will be graded. So it's gonna be two pieces. It's going to be your actual chatbot, and it's going to be your paper. It's gonna be looked at in parallel, okay? So now, here, that's what I was talking about. This is a skill, Mr. BMI Help Center, right? And I'm gonna click on this. Okay? I'm gonna click on it, and it's gonna open. See this? This is all the work. When I started this, I had nothing. So the greatest fear of a writer is what? Blank piece of paper, right? I have nothing in here. Intent entities, as you see here, this is what I started with. Now, what did I do next? I started brainstorming. Okay, what is my intent? Intent is a specific request. So what my user would want to do? Estimate BMI, explain me what my BMI is. What is my blood pressure? Can you explain it to me, right? Can you email? Can you exit, right? So this is an intent. Intent is something that I want to do. I want to estimate my BMI. I want you to explain me something. I want to email, and I want to exit, right? This is an intent. Entity is a content. For instance, explain what? Explain what BMI is. Explain what blood pressure is, right? Eventually, I could add something else if I was going to expand my application. For instance, explaining what stroke is, right? Something like that. Email, well, this is very important. See, I have an intent to email. On the other hand, this is a pattern entity. Email, I'm gonna use an entity to catch, to identify the pattern in the user's input. So here it is, this is a pattern, right? And I'm assuming that all of you did a great job in starting the walkthrough, right? We're starting the walkthrough that is posted in an assignment folder. So as you notice that you can create the entities manually, right? And when you create the entities manually, you have an option. You can do the synonyms for each entity you create. You can do the synonyms. Or if you click on the arrow, there's an option called pattern, right? So this is what I'm doing in here. I put the pattern, and this is a pattern for email. And I put the value valid email. So this is a pattern. And those are my intents. And every intent, I just have an example here, has examples, right? So example is another way to phrase it. How else my user is going to ask? Somebody's going to say body mass index, somebody's going to say BMI, and so on, right? So this is just alternative way to say it. And if you look at it here, oops, this browser, this is what I have, right? I have intents, but I started with nothing. And what I did here was I added some of them manually, and some of them I just imported here. And I clicked on import, and then I chose my file, and then I clicked on import. This is how I edit most of it, right? You can do this. You can take the Excel file and type it first, right? You can type it first. But, okay, few things to mention about entities. There are two types of entities. User-defined entities and the system entities. So you might be wondering what the difference is, and I spelled it out for you in here. On this slide, I spelled it out for you. My entities are entities what I defined. Pre-built entities are already in there. What you need to do is you need to turn them on and off, right? Like what I did over here. I go to system entities, and in my implementation, I'm going to be using date. I turn it on, right? Date and time, that's what I'm using. And I'm going to use numbers. Why am I using numbers? Because I'm going to be reading whatever you enter. I'm going to read the weight from the input, right? The height. I'm reading it. So I'm using numbers. And also I'm going to be using the dates, right? So I turn it on. I don't turn on what I'm not using. I'm not using the currency. Okay, now I have my entities. This is what I define, right? When I export the file, when I export the JSON file, I do not export the system entities. I only export what I defined, right? The system entities are not editable. My entities are editable, right? So that's the difference. Now, the names cannot contain, okay, this is something important. The names your names cannot start with SYS. When you create your entities, you cannot start the name cannot start with SYS because SYS is reserved for system entities. Okay, so with that being said, we have these three, right? System dates, system time, and system numbers. We'll use that, and I'll show you where. Okay, so basically, I created the bot, and we're going to reverse engineer it, but here, I'm just going through the steps. You can add an entity manually, right? And you specify the synonyms or you specify the patterns. And I think you can have up to 5 patterns, something like that. Because if you have in a phone, right? Depending, you have a domestic phone, you have an international phone, right? You can have more than one pattern for matching. And this is how you do from the CSV file, right? You can add entities from the CSV file. Now, this is a dialog, right? So basically, when I started, I had nothing. I had only welcome node and anything else node. Welcome node, it just fires initially, when you start the dialog, it fires the welcome node. Anything else node, it just whatever happens when none of the nodes gets fired. I enter my input, right? And the condition is evaluated starting from the top. Well, did Elena just start the conversation? No. Did Elena ask to email? No. Did Elena ask to estimate BMI? No. Something like that. When each of these becomes false, it will go to anything else. And it's a good way to catch the unexpected input. Like, for example, if I enter, I want a candy. If I enter that as an input, I'm supposed to receive something like, oh, I'm sorry, I did not get that. I did not get your menu, right? So every node has a condition, entry condition, right? What triggers a node? It has a response, and there are different types of responses: text, image, option, and pause. So for the menu that we're gonna do, it's an option type of response. And then you have a finally, what to do next? Am I gonna wait for a user input, or I jump to anywhere else in the dialog structure? Or am I going to just skip, So it depends on what was entered, right? So now we're going to reverse engineer the welcome node. Basically, in a normal welcome node, you just have a welcome message, right? I changed it. And let me show you what I did instead here. I changed it. I'm checking this. So this is my dialog. I'm going to the welcome node straight. Click, and I changed that. I said this. First of all, I had to click on a customize, and I had to turn on multiple responses. So what that will do is that it will allow my bot to respond differently depending on the specified condition. And what I'm doing here, this is the system entity time. So I'm saying that if right now is before 10 a.m. and the time is in the military time. So if now is before 10 a.m., this is what I want to do. I want to do this response right here, right? If it's not before 10 a.m., I check if it's before, this is 5 p.m. Then this is what I want to do, response here. Otherwise, do this. Now, notice that this is not anything else node. Anything else in this case means if it's neither of these first two conditions. If it's neither of these first two conditions is true, it will go to this, right? It will go here. So now let's take a look at what's in here. I'm going to click on this. Okay, I have two types of responses, textual response and an image, right? So this is a picture. And the pictures that I show depends on the time because see this is an image URL. And if I click here, there's going to be a different image URL because remember I said I have 3 doctors that work on a different shift, right? So here I'm using the system entity to check for the time, right? And I'm displaying the text and an image depending on that time. Now, what is this? There is something called a response variation, right? It's not the same as a conditional response. It's when the same condition is met. Sometimes when I run the bot, I see this message, sometimes I see this message. So that way my bot looks more like a human. Otherwise, if I start it at the same time of day, what happens? If this is all message I see, it's easy to figure out that my bot is a robot, right? I want to have a little bit of variety. So that's what I added here, and that's what you'll have to do in your homework assignment. Now, I can specify if I want these guys to be sequential. Like, for example, if I launch the bot first, this is what I see. Linesh launches the bot next, this is what he will see. All right, Yelena launches this bot, and she will see this, right? This is sequential. On the other hand, I can pick it random, right? So it does not know which message will display next, right? But these guys here will display only if the current time falls under this range, right? And something to bear in mind, I do not know how this will work with respect to time zones. I'm in Eastern time zone. If you test this bot and if you are on the West Coast, you might get something different response, right? Anyhow, so this is how I did. I just reverse engineered. And what I want to do next, I want to go to the main menu. What is the main menu? Main menu is a subnode in here. See this? You can add a child node. Just to add the child node, you just click on the node here and you just click on add child. So this is what happens when the parent node is true, right? The parent node has to be true. The execution will drop. It will do here. It will do the response of the parent node, and then will jump. It will start checking the child node because there could be more than one, and it will grab the child node which is true, right? In this case, I set the entry condition to true because I always want to display my menu after the welcome message. But take a look at what I'm doing now. I'm creating a variable here, and I'm storing the current date of the week. This is my date entity. Look at this now, dot, and this is just the syntax, just bear with me. Reformat, date, time, and you specify. So if you put E 5 times, that's going to be the full spelling of the day of the week. That's going to be the full spelling the day of the week. If you put the triple E, it's going to be abbreviated date. And there is a documentation on a cloud. There is a documentation on different formatting. But this is a variable, okay? I create this context variable and I'm storing what current day is, okay? And I'm gonna use it later. Now, this is an option. Let me explain to you because this is hard to understand, but if you've done some web development, you might have an idea when you have a list, right? And you have a display value. This is what is displayed in the menu. And this is a value. Value means it's an intent that gets triggered when you select an option, right? So in other words, clicking on that option is equivalent to typing, I want to estimate my BMI. So this will trigger an intent called BMI. This will trigger explain. This will trigger the blood pressure. This will trigger explain blood pressure, email me, and goodbye, right? So this is actually the value. It tells which intent will be triggered if I select this option, right? Okay, so this one I had to explain to you because this is a little bit tricky. And here I'm waiting for user's input, right? Well, depending on what is entered, I'm gonna do next, right? So I went over this and now, this is the blood pressure node, and I'll show you that too because see, this is important. This is important key configuration. So in the blood pressure, it's a little tricky because what I'm doing here, I am in the blood pressure, I'm collecting, right? So here, if you take a look at this, this is a blood pressure reading, right? Blood pressure and not explain. Let me show you what I'm doing here. I'll explain to you what I'm doing here shortly, but first let's look at this. Let's look at this. This is called a slot. I want to make sure that my end user specifies the blood pressure. If the user specifies something that does not contain a number, I want to keep on prompting the user to enter the valid number, right? So this is what a slot is called. But to do that, I had to enable slot. I had to click on the customized and I had to turn the slots on. The slot allow me to capture the input. So basically, I want to check if the number is identified in the input. See this system number? This is a system entity, right? Do you remember earlier today I checked in system number? So here it is. I'm checking for system entity, system number in the input. And I'm saving it in a variable called systolic. And if the user did not provide the valid number in the input, it's going to ask again, enter your systolic blood pressure. Same thing here for the diastolic. It's going to prompt you to enter it. And this is called the required. It means you must enter the blood pressure to proceed, right? On the other hand, I added these handlers. Like for example, I can say, hey, I'm confused. What's a blood pressure? When you say this, you get this explanation. And then you're back to the same question, right? And I should be able to quit. I should be able to quit at any time, right? Like if I select quit, if I choose to quit, I should be able to, right? So if I choose to quit, this is what I'm doing. I'm setting the systolic and diastolic to -1, right? I'm setting it to -1. It's a dummy value, okay? This is what I'm doing. Then I'm gonna skip to response. Okay, discard changes. And then I'm going to response. This is a long one. So in here, I check if a user decided to quit, then I had a dummy number. I set two variables, systolic and diastolic to -1, right? If a user wants to quit, that's it. I'm gonna jump to goodbye. This is how I handle, right? At any time when you enter in the blood pressure, you can quit. So this is what I did. I added the handler, and inside the handler, I'm setting two variables to -1, right? So -1 is a valid number, right? So it's not gonna ask me, it's not gonna prompt me to enter for a number anymore, right? And in here, I'm just handling it. See this? Handler. The handlers allow me to escape the slots, right? It allows me to escape the slots, or I can ask my side question and then continue, and then resume, right? I can ask my side question and then resume. That's what it's doing. And here, based on the blood pressure reading, I'm displaying a different message. Like if your blood pressure is super high or something like that. And this is a catch. This is just, if neither of this is recognized, then this is a message I display, right? If neither of this is true, it's always good to catch it, right? Okay, so jump to is basically telling me what to do next. So I can click here and I can enter it. But some of you might be wondering, how do I access my variables here? You do this, see this? In the response, you click Open Context Editor, and that's where you can set all your variables, okay? Now, I know this is very complicated, but you will have a recording, and I promise I'll also give you the code for this. I started slowly. When you start it, you're gonna do slowly. First, you're not gonna do the handles right away. What you're gonna do first is you're gonna try to collect the numbers, right? You wanna try to get the numbers, and you want to make sure that it's reading it correctly. And if you notice that, okay, so basically, see this is what I'm doing here. This is a variable. I'm reading it into a variable. So, well, basically to do this, let's do this. Try it out. See this is try it out, and I'm gonna clear my context. So this is what I'm starting, right? Immediately, the menu is displayed. See this? Good evening. It's good evening because now is evening time. Now it's after 5 p.m. I see this picture. Take a look at this. When I click on Manage Context, it set my variable Monday. Remember, I was setting my variable in the menu node, and also it picked up my time zone, right? So this is what I have. Now take a look at this, and the same deal is for BMI, but I'm just gonna show the blood pressure. Okay, here it is. I'm asked to enter the blood pressure, right? Enter the high blood pressure. I'm confused. I'm gonna say explain. Okay. Watch what happens. Blood pressure is a range at which the blood is pushing the vessels, right? Now it's asking me again to enter your systolic blood pressure, right? Look at this. I put 115. Now it's asking me to enter my diastolic blood pressure, right? And I want exit. I don't want to do this anymore. Fine. Sounds like you want to quit. See this? It worked. How did I do it? I tricked it. I set two variables to -1, and then I checked if it's less than 0, then I exit, right? So that's what it did. On the other hand, if I clear this, right? If I do this, if I do my blood pressure, and if I just go through this, right? If I type it, let's type something 140 over 90. Now it's going to be something different. Your blood pressure is elevated. Adopt healthy lifestyle. And here it's asking you what you want to do next. Notice that the menu is slightly different because I have a similar node, but I'm not going back to the main menu. I'm displaying this menu from someplace else, right? I'm displaying it from someplace else. It's in here, main menu. Basically, this is what I'm doing. I'll tell you that. If the blood pressure reading is not dangerously high, right? If I'm not in danger, not dangerously high, not dangerously low, I'm going here. I'm displaying this menu. And then, see this? So this is a menu, and then I'm waiting for a user input. What do you want to do next? I'm not repeating this option. I'm not repeating it right now. But this is a limitation. I do not track which options you visited. I do not track it. It would have been nice to track what I already done, right? But I'm not doing it, so that's a limitation. Now, you got an idea, but to fully understand it, you really have to look at what I'm doing, right? And notice this here, see this system number? It identifies that I entered the number, right? But also, if you look at this BMI, this is more interesting because I'm doing the calculations in here. See this? You're entering the height and the weight, and this is how you do the calculation. Let me click here. Here it is. So here, this is how you pick up from the input. Here we go. See this? This angular thing means I'm picking up from the input. I'm taking my variable, and this here, it means I'm calculating it. See this? This is a calculated value. I put this angular thing, question mark. This is a variable, and I multiply it by the weight times 703 divided by the height squared. So here, this means that I have a calculation inside. You see that? So I'm taking two numbers from the input, I'm calculating it, okay? And then based on the value, I display the different message, right? This is what I'm doing. It's similar, but it's different because I'm doing the calculation. Now here, there is no angular bracket because I'm not displaying what the value is. I'm just checking it, right? Here I'm checking it. And in here, I'm displaying it. So you have to have this. Right? You're displaying, you're calculating and displaying the value. Well, this is a little bit tricky, but well, how I started slowly, and I was looking up things gradually in the documentation. So that's why I said the blank piece of paper is the greatest fear of writer. Okay, so now let's take a look at the slides here. Well, here I'm just showing you different response types, right? The text and the image, we went through that, right? You just specify the image URL. It's not a web page URL, it's an image URL, okay? We cannot copy paste an image in there either. It has to be a URL. And I explain how this works, right? Now, this is the blood pressure. I explained it to you, but do you see this? At the time when I took the screenshot, I did not have handlers. You have to do it slowly. You have to test it. When you add one thing, when you add one little tiny thing, you have to retest all scenarios. Trust me, you have to retest all of the scenarios when you make a little change. Okay? So, here it is. This I'm just showing you how to do the email. And let's actually do the email. See this? This is a little bit tricky to store it. You have to collect it and you have to store it in a variable. So if you go in here, email, what's email actually? This is an entity. This is a user entity, and I used pattern, right? So if I go in here, this is my email. See this? This is an email. Here it is, but instead I selected the patterns. See here, if I add a new value, I have an option. I can select pattern, right? Okay. So now let's close this out and let's go to the node where I'm collecting an email. And it's in, oh, I'm going up. This is an email me. Nope, it's email me, it's in here. Okay. Now take a look what I'm doing. This is a slot, right? This is a slot. I'm going to check for email. So in my input, I'm checking for the contents, for which is an email, right? And if it's entered, I'm storing it in a variable called email, right? Please enter your email. But the problem is in a response, I want to type in which email address was entered, right? I want to type it. So what I have to do is I have to create a variable and I call it email, right? And what this does is it grabs the value in my input and then stores. See this? It's gonna take the value from my input, and you have to do that literal because that's a value of an entity. Well, it's just a syntax. It took me a lot of trial and error to get it right. It took me a lot of trial and error to get it right, trust me. Okay, so what I did here, I just had to do this. I had to open context editor, right? I can close context editor or I can open context editor. Or ultimately, I can type the code in here in the JSON editor. See this context, right? And this is my variable, and this is what it's equal to. This angular thing, this angular, it means that it's taken from the input, right? But here, in this case, I'm picking up the entity. I'm trying to recognize the entity from the input, not just the input itself. I need to grab, because my input could be something like my email is blah, blah, blah. And it's supposed to pick up only email, right? So if my input contains something funny, it will just pick up, like scissors. Let's just click scissors. I'm gonna do email, and it's asking me to enter my email. If I do XXX, and then I put something like Elena, all right? If I type this, let's see what it's gonna do now. All right, see this XXX? See this? It's telling me here the information about where my blood pressure will be set to your email. What happened to XXX? See this? XXX is not there. Why? It's because I'm not storing the input. I'm storing rather the value of my entity. And my entity was an email, right? In theory, it is possible to do more than one. I have not tried it, but it's possible to have an array of emails, to extract an array. It's possible, but I have not tried. So if you want to, if you could beat me with that, go ahead. Okay, now, here it is, right? So we went over the system entities, right? We went over the how to grab the date, right? Date and time. And I showed you how to configure the responses based on the input. Oh, here it is. This is another concept here. There is something called folder. I have a bunch of concepts. Explain what BMI is, explain what blood pressure is, yada, yada. All of my notes have some similar functionalities. And this is just for me, it's just easier to organize my board because I can kind of like put all notes in a folder and collapse. Sometimes I just want to get more organized, and I can put several notes in the folder here, and I can collapse the whole folder. That way my dialog is kind of like more readable. Now, I'm not sure if it's possible to add the subfolders. I have not tried. But here I have a folder, and here the folder can have an entry condition. So if my intent is explain, right, then I want to execute either of these nodes. So if my enter condition is explain and the topic is BMI, if my topic is BMI, then I want to hit the first node in here. If my topic is a blood pressure, I hit the second node. But notice this, what is this here, parentheses? It's because my value contains space. It's because my value contains the space. I have to use parentheses. Those are the entry conditions for the nodes inside the folder. And it says here that my nodes inside the folder have one level. They don't have children nodes, right? So basically a folder is the way to organize the nodes. It's nothing but a way to organize the nodes. And this is just if you want to explain what BMI is, and it just shows a nice picture and a nice response. And again, here I'm using variation because I don't want my board to be perceived as a board, okay? Now let's go here. Here what I did was I typed through some test scenarios. This is just what I showed you, but for your information, I just spelled it out, what it means. Because some of you like to have it in writing, you like to have it written, right? And you like to have it verbal presentation, so that way you have it both, right? Now we're gonna do something fun. We're going to build an assistant. This is not in your walkthrough, so I want you to pay undivided attention here. And there is a little activity where it's optional, highly recommended, but I want you, it's an opportunity for you to involve your friends and your family members actually. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna build an assistant. If you take a look at this, I already have one, right? I created an assistant with this chatbot, with the skills that I just showed you. But this is what you can do. Look, you're gonna do create new. Remember that I had two skills here, right? This is the one from your walkthrough, right? Now I'm gonna create an assistant for this walkthrough thing, right? Look what I'm doing. I'm gonna go to here. I'm gonna do create new, And in here, I'm just gonna say, that was Mr. Cold example, right? And I'm gonna keep this checked in. I'm gonna hit create. This is gonna be assistant, and then I'm gonna do add skills. And for my skills, I'm gonna do add existing, and I'm gonna select this, right? You're gonna, just for you, assume that it's going to be one of the skills that you develop, or one of the skills that you build. And this is a preview link, right? This is how you would do it. But instead, now let's go look at this. This is what I created for you, right? And this is what you're gonna do. This is going to be fun, but it's fun not at the expense of doing the hard work. So here are the rules of the game. This will create a this will create a public link, right? This will create a public link. Let me show you. I go here, preview link, see this preview link, and this is a link you click on, and you're going to share this link. You're going to share this link with 2 of your family members. Okay, you're gonna share this with 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 5 friends actually per day, right? But, big but, for this to work, you have to have your chatbot ready 2 or 3 days before the assignment is due. You have to have the chatbot ready, at least the first draft, before your assignment is due. So here is the link that you're going to send to all your participants, and your link is going to be slightly different from my link, right? Oops, okay. So your link is going to be different from my link. Mine is here. Then what's going to happen is your friends, right? On the first day, your friend or your relative, your family member, or you can use your classmates, or you can use a TA as a volunteer. They're going to run an application, right? They're just going to click and do that, you know, enter this, you know, they're just going to run it, and maybe your user is going to phrase the questions differently, right? Who knows, right? So maybe I just type something like 60, right? It should recognize, right? So basically what it's doing behind the scene, if you're entering this as your friends are using this chatbot, behind the scene, it's collecting the information. So if I go back to my tab in here, and if I go back here, let me show you what you're gonna do. And I'm gonna go to this, it's in a skill, oops, you have to go back to the home, skills, and take a look at this. I have to click on this, and then there is an option, I think it's in here, improve. Take a look at what's going on, right? This does not work when I do try it out. This works only when I do the preview link, or if I deploy the chatbot. Linesh is going to show you how to deploy the chatbot. But take a look at what this is doing. This is collecting, this is the history data, history of my conversations. It's telling me here that I had 3 conversations, right? So this is it's showing me the current week. And this week we only had 1 day. So let me pick last week, right? Last week. Let's pick past 2 weeks, actually. Okay. So over past 2 weeks, I had 41 conversations. This is an average number of messages per conversation, and and this is a maximum, I believe. Yes, maximum. Yeah. So make understanding and so on, right? So here you have the plots. Now here, what you have is that it shows me which entities, which intents and entities were hit the most, right? Now what you're gonna do, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go to user conversations tab, and here it tracks the actual conversation. So you're gonna open the actual conversation, and you're gonna check what your volunteer entered and how it was classified. Like, for example, see this? I chose blood pressure, I show classification, intent is blood pressure, this is correct, right? On the other hand, if I put blood pressure, and if my bot was misinterpreting it as email me, I could click on a pencil and I could make correction. See this? I could make correction, I can select the correct intent and save it. See this? That's how I train my bot. I can make a correction, right? I'm not going to make any changes now, but what I'm saying is that this is what you're going to do. Your volunteers will run the bot for a day, right? Just do a few runs. You don't have to do a lot, just a couple times. And then at the end of the day, you're going to check if there is something unexpected response. If you see any unexpected responses by your bot, you're gonna go in and you make a corrections and take a note of what you corrected. The next day you repeat the activity and note any corrections that you had to make. Or maybe your volunteer types the same input and receive the expected result right now, right? So this is for you to observe and note it in your paper. This is an activity, so perhaps select maybe a couple family members, right? So I spelled out the rules for you in here. Well, but very important, you must have your bot ready 2 to 3 days before the assignment is due, because you have to have 2 or 3 days to collect the data. You're gonna share that link with some of your friends. You're gonna ask each participant to run 3 to 4 conversations. At the end of the first day, you're gonna go in, check the logs. You're gonna take notes and note any adjustments in the classifications that you made, and I just showed you how, right? And then you're gonna note which intents were top, right? And you're gonna repeat this experiment the next day. And if the time allows, you can do 3 days. And you want to share it in your paper. It's just a plus side. It will make your paper look better, okay? Let's say it this way. Well, it's not something that you have to do, but if I were you, I would. Okay, it would motivate me to start working on assignment early, and it would help me understand what actually going on behind the scene and how the bots are trained, right? So see the 60, I have to make sure that it was in fact interpreted as a number. I'm going to show up classifications why I expect this to be irrelevant, right? Well, something like that. And actually, while I was doing it, I picked up that my blood pressure 120 over 80 was not looked at as a normal blood pressure. I saw it, and I could go into my conversation and fix it, right? So you see the whole conversation log, what the user input was, what the bot responded with. And if you see something unusual, you fix it and you note what you fixed. And what happens the next day is the accuracy of response is better. Something like that. Just for you, okay? So I guess last but not least, that's it. It just shows you, I just spelled out what to look at. And at the very top, you can also filter your statistics by, you can look at specific, you can filter by specific entities, or you can filter by specific intents here. Like for instance, I'm interested in which conversations somebody asked to email. So I can do that. I can look at specific conversations where a user was asked to enter email. And I have my plots here, right? And see this? And here it goes, this is a number of values. So how many different emails were entered, and I can further drill down to look at the frequency of my values, right? Now I can look at my, oh, that's valid email. Well, it's because this is a pattern entity. This is a pattern entity, that's why. Okay, so you guys got this idea, right? So Linesh, do you want to show the actual deployment? Because what I showed, it was a preview link, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have the snapshots, not the, but I can do what the WordPress snapshots and how much time do we have?
We do.
Okay, good.
Well, if you want to, I mean.
Yeah, no, definitely we can do that. We can do that.
Do you want to share the screen or how?
Yes, yeah, I would be sharing this.
Because Linesh and myself, about one couple semesters ago, we did a live demo at the university, right? We demoed the chatbot.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go through.
Yeah, it's a different area. We did the educational chatbot.
Right. I actually have to unshare before I can share my screen.
Okay, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm hearing some echo. Is it just on my side or? Okay, I think it's gone now. That's good. Let me just start the presentation here. So, good evening, everyone. And you just heard Yelena kind of, just showed you this particular slide where, this would be it's kind of a deployment framework. You would typically create an application. Let's say an application like a Node.js application, right? That if you are doing this in IBM Cloud, like a full-fledged, deployment of a chatbot, you typically have a Node.js kind of an application that would be connected to say, you could have the benefit of using multiple backend systems, right? You have Postgres as you may have Postgres, you have SQL, DB2 warehouse. So you kind of gone through some of the services, some of the backend systems. You could also make use of other Watson services out there, right? The tone analyzer or speech to text, text to speech. Now, all these could be connected with your chatbot, your conversation service, which is also called the Watson Assistant now. So this is typically the setup, and very importantly, you would now want to have an interface to your chatbot, right? So far what you've seen is you created a chatbot, you deploy it, like just have a preview link to it, and you're just running a chatbot. But what you would generally see is you go to a particular website and you have a chatbot running out there that's kind of helping you. So you would want to have an interface to your chatbot, and it could be a Slack Messenger or Facebook Messenger or a web browser or like your website, and that's how your users are going to start interacting with your chatbot. So now if you go to IBM Cloud and you click on the deploy options of, let's say you create the Watson Assistant service, right? And one of the options, you'll see a couple of them, like one is the deploy options, and you'll see the credentials. When you click on the deploy options, it's going to show you all the options or all the different ways you can deploy your chatbot. The most popular ones being Slack or the Facebook Messenger, and then of course the URL, right? You're deploying the workspace directly through a URL, like a link that you can provide or that you can make use of. And there are also other deployment options, like publishing with the BotKit, building with a sample app. It could be, like as I said, Node.js kind of an app. If you click on publish with BotKit, it will bring you to a GitHub page where there's lots and lots of programming samples, like there are lots of code samples that you can make use of to make your chatbot as intelligent as you would want, right? So if you are someone who would want to kind of who are interested in programming and want to do multiple things with your chatbot, this would be a perfect site to go to and look at all the different code samples. But if you are someone who would want to just make maximum use of what's out there, not get into a lot of configuration things, and want to just get your chatbot completed in IBM and some service that you're going to be building your chatbot, then you would want to kind of deploy it on some kind of a website builder, a content management system. And one of the most popular ones today is WordPress, right? That is one of the largest, most popular content management and blogging system, where if you look at just the market share, more than 25,000 websites get created daily. And I'm sure many of you here today, you may know the WordPress, so I did not introduce you to what WordPress is, but it's a website builder basically, or a content management builder. It can let you build your entire website. And then the reason we're talking about WordPress here, and we looked at WordPress while we had this session a couple semesters back, is because it provides a direct plugin to the chatbot that gets built on IBM Cloud. That's the beauty of it. So you really do not get into a lot of configuration kind of things. All you need is having a solid, a paid WordPress account, and installing a plugin, a Watson Assistant plugin. So I'm just kind of going to show you a few snapshots as to what's really important, and you'll see that just in another few slides, you'll see that it's so easy to have your chatbot and you plugged in into a website and get it up and running as if it's your business website that you brought up, and you brought up a new business and you want this chatbot that could help you as your customer service assistant. So the other tab that's going to be very important here, in your Watson Assistant, is your credentials tab, right? And this is a very important tab. This is the one which is going to help you to link to wherever you want it, right? Especially in WordPress. So in this service credentials, you'll see that there's a username, you'll see there's a password here, and there's a workspace URL. These three are very, very important pieces, right? So you may want to copy and paste it in one area, or you may have to keep coming here to get these three pieces of information, because these are the three pieces that are going to be useful when you go onto WordPress, right? So what you see on the screen right now is a WordPress dashboard, right? Your dashboard on WordPress, and as soon as you log in, you come to this website, and then there is an option there called the settings, and there's an special options there for Watson Assistant now, which I'm kind of going to go through. But what you see here is in the settings, you will need to plug in these three pieces of information. What's your workspace ID? What's your username? What's your password? And then the fourth one is your gateway URL, right? The URL that you're going to make use of, especially if you're going to be calling your, using the API method to connect with your, so there are typically two methods. Either you go by username and password and that workspace URL to connect to your chatbot, or you would have your API connectivity, right? So basically, and this is actually the website that we quickly built, which was just a single page here, and this was more of just a demo sample site that Yelena and I created to for the UMUC, the college website. And the chatbot that was built was just an admissions assistant, right? So you go onto this website, and then it would quickly show this chatbot there that would come up here and ask, and this way it would help you to answer your questions that you may have on this particular site. So as I was saying, when you typically get onto this WordPress dashboard, as you can see on the left here, there's a Watson. As soon as you install the plugin, it's a Watson Assistant option would come up on the WordPress site, and this would have three basic things. So it's just kind of showing you, when you click on the plugins, it will show you the Watson Assistant plugin, and you would just activate this plugin, right? So it's kind of available, especially if you have a paid if you're a paid user of WordPress. It will let you install different plugins, and one of them is Watson Assistant. And what will be, when you see at the Watson Assistant, it will have three different options. For this particular menus option, there are three options here: the setup chatbot, the customize plugin, and the advanced features. Now, each of these areas really helps you to indicate, you configure your chatbot onto this web page. It helps you to do different things. So first and foremost, right, we want to connect from your WordPress site, connect to your chatbot, which is in IBM Cloud. So what are the three pieces of information? We already talked about that, right? We need a username and password. So we click on the plugin setup, and we say we are going to use the username and password. And then once we have that, we plug in our username, we plug in the password, we plug in the workspace URL, right? The three important pieces of information that we need. So once that is, once you've got this plugin set up, you pretty much connected now to your chatbot, but it still gives you some more options that are going to be useful. For example, you go on to the second option here, which is customizing this plugin. And you'll see that there are three tabs. There's a behavior tab, there's a chatbots, and there's a chat button. So for the behavior, it says, okay, do you want to delay a few seconds on your website before the chatbot comes up? Do you want to show your chat box on multiple pages, right? So it's more like, some bells and whistles here, but going to be important because you want to really, know based on your website, which would be the best place to show your chat box, right? So I'm sorry, the chatbot. So this will give you some, way to configure the position. It will also let you configure if it is going to be only on small devices, like you want it like a full screen, or you just want a small screen. You want the chatbots to be minimized by default, which is, you don't want to do that, right? Because then it just defeats the purpose of why you would want to have a chatbot. So 9 out of 10 times you would not want to minimize it. You want to maximize it, but still let your user minimize it at some time. You'd also want to have probably a send message button. But if you're going to use the enter key as your sending message, then you would not need to have a special button for that. Then also, you want to have some kind of animation. So you see, you're kind of building it up on what you've already done on IBM Cloud. It's basically you've got the core of the chatbot in IBM Cloud. What you are doing here is how your chatbot is going to look, right? And how it's going to function. But all that functionality is residing in IBM Cloud, okay? So going further, it just one more thing on the chat button. Like when you minimize your chat box, our chatbot, how would it look like, right? Like if you see the preview here, it would look like a green button there, just on the, maybe on the bottom right of your screen. So these are different options that come with, with the plugin features, which you would kind of configure here. It also gives you an ability on seeing that whether you want to restrict the number of calls that you'd make to the chatbot, because based on the account that you would have on IBM Cloud, maybe it's restricting to maybe 10,000 calls, maybe 100,000 calls, and to make sure that nobody's going to be really abusing this system, abusing your website or the chatbot there. You may want to restrict the number of API calls. You may want to restrict the number of API calls per client. So if I'm just sitting here, I'm go to this website and I just keep clicking all the time, all day long, I may just run out of all the API. Or you may run out of all the API number of API calls you could have. Probably the IBM Cloud could start charging you, right? So you want to be careful. These are certain configurations that are really helpful that the WordPress is already providing you with this particular plugin. It also provides you with some predefined responses that if you have not taken care of in your chatbot, you can take care of it here. It gives you also the option for voice calling. If you would want to, let's say you are displaying a particular number as one of your responses in the chatbot, and you want the user to activate this, right? Maybe make a voice call straight from the chatbot. You could also provide that. There's a service what you will who can probably help you with that. You can have an account there, and you can make a voice over IP calls, right? So VoIP calls. You could also save certain, if you are capturing certain names, certain things you are probably capturing during your conversation, you can, probably make use of and just let, based on what you've configured in chatbot, you could also let WordPress know what it needs to capture. So these are, in short, very simple things. I may have gone through this quickly here, but all I'm kind of showing you is in a very simple way, without doing any programming, by just going through these simple steps, you could basically have the entire, the chatbot being placed on a web page that you may have developed on WordPress. Okay, so this was my last slide here. But once again, as I showed you, this just simple little configuration led us to bring up this web page with a chatbot. So this web page was on WordPress, and we had a chatbot, and Yelena and I kind of worked on a chatbot that was more for the admissions assistance. And it was a little different than the chatbot that you saw today, but the similar lines. It was developed exactly the same way that Yelena just explained, by going on IBM Cloud, putting in, the intents, the entities, the dialogue, exactly the same structure, the same way it was built. And then this web page was built on WordPress. Okay, so let me open up for any questions.
Thanks,
For
Lynn.
Yelena and
I think Yelena is out. I don't see her.
Oh, okay. No worries. Can still
I don't
take
know where she is, but she left. Maybe she had some problem. Oh, here she is.
Oh, okay.
Yelena, unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I got disconnected for some reason. Now I'm connected back. Not sure what's going on.
Well, I just want to make sure that we see the question. They can be in the chatbot.
Okay, so let me see. Well, the most important thing is that I'm back. Something happened. I don't know.
No, don't worry. I don't see any question in the chat, but you guys, you can unmute yourself and speak also. We have very good audio today, so I don't see any problem if you want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Are we, for the last section that you just explained, is that required using WordPress for this assignment?
No.
No, it's not required. It's just, we try to open and to make this cool. The requirements are described in the assignment. This is not required. This is above beyond if you want to go, yes.
Yeah, it just says to explain what would you use to deploy. That's it. You don't have to deploy.
Okay.
Well, it's like some of those questions are, what would you do to, what you would have done if you were going to do, this type of things. Well, you have to build the chatbot, right?
And it could be on any topic, right?
Yeah. Like, what's your hobby? Tell me, what's your hobby? Well,
and is there a requirement for how many pages that we need to write for the assignment? Because I'm not sure about that, and I wanted to clarify.
It's not about pages. Yelena, explain exactly how many stuff they have to have.
It's a quality over quantity.
Okay, so it doesn't matter how many pages as long as we can explain in detail what we're writing about, correct?
Well, yeah, you have to explain it, and there's such a thing called, concise, where you got important concepts, right? You cover what needs to be covered, but at the same time, you're not, well, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I'm not sure everyone has read everything. So if you read, the thing is you won't understand the requirement of the assignment until you read what is coming before, because there are many concepts. But you actually need to build the chatbot. You need to have the JSON file and submit the JSON file. You just don't need to actually deploy it in the web. That is not required because it requires.
Oh, okay, so.
But you just don't need to build the chatbot.
Right, we can build it and then.
Yes?
Sorry, you were saying?
I'm saying that you need to build the chatbot. And when you build the chatbot, you export the JSON file and you submit your paper together with the JSON file, and we can check what you did. You did actually.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but the part was I was showing, just if you want to if you're interested in how things actually work and what's actually going on when the interaction with the chatbot happens, you saw how it stores the conversation. Well, because in your paper you have to discuss what you would do to improve the relevancy of responses, right? You can just describe it, yes, but I recommend to do what I did. I did the preview link, and I could get some couple volunteers. Like it could be anybody, your family member, or it could be even me. You could ask a TA, or you could ask even an instructor to be a volunteer. I mean, it seems no. I mean,
yeah, I just wanted to clarify about the paper part because I understand we have to build a chatbot. Yeah, I just want to make sure that the paper part is clear. Sorry.
Oh, but if you read the requirements, it says what the write-up should be, right? I mean, build it, yeah. Take notes as you build it, and
yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify because I read the instruction, and then on the paper side, I just wanted to make sure that everything is captured based on what it says, so I'm not missing anything when I do start writing it, because it's better to start writing, taking notes as we develop instead of build it first and write the notes, because I think that was the issue I was having the last assignment.
Well, last assignment is water under the bridge. Let's have fun on this assignment. This is fun. Last one was, I agree with you, it was the most challenging assignment in Data 650, but it's over. Let's just focus now. It's fun right now. It's
sounds good.
Yeah.
And one more question, it's just the topic is based on whatever we pick, and then we create whatever limitation that we want to add to the chat box, correct?
Well, yeah, like somebody liked to do about the beer. Somebody, what else people doing?
Movie.
Yep, movie. Well, the one with Mr. Caldwell, that's why sometimes I laugh at it, but that's just, I made it up. But I mean, I don't know, everybody comes with different ideas. I see something different, and I think there is one link in the announcement, right? That was, the guy did it last semester.
Yeah, he did Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, if there is anything in your area, like for instance, it could be something that answers question about the exercises, like you enter the muscle group and it tells you the exercise. Well,
so here the good thing in this exam, in this assignment is you have to do what you really enjoy. And the purpose is you enjoy what you're doing. You didn't have this opportunity in the previous one because it was very strictly decide what is needed. But here, just use imagination, what you like, and do it.
Awesome. Sounds fun.
So this should be fun. I mean, honestly, that's my favorite part of the course.
Yeah, but we need everything, yeah.
Oh,
and the thing is here, the idea is that you understand that the advancement of the chatbots was possible with the advancement of these AI cognitive services, because you are using something which is already AI service, which is the Watson assistant. You have the conversation services, so the natural language processing is behind, and you are building in these two, which is already let's say, the primary part of AI is understanding the language. And you are just taking this and build on top of this. That's why it's so easy to build some AI application, which are the chatbots. We are not talking about the old-fashioned chatbot if it has programmed, for instance, the temperature should be 78. And if the customer asks something different, the chatbot doesn't understand anything. So we're talking about that you have the opportunity to build much better product without any programming, just on top of AI service, which is Watson Assistant. That is the main idea, and take advantage and try to understand why today we are able to do this. And a few years ago, we were not able to do this because this type of services at this reasonable price were not available. And I'm talking about price because if you are a small business and if you go to the cloud and you see the paid option, which are not concern of us, we are using this for free. But if you are a small business and you want to use these services, let's say later on in your professional life, you want to open some small business and do stuff which are very important for customer, you can see how reasonable this price is, even for small business to do. So the way data science and AI are going, this is one important point I want to understand. Everybody is going to open source, reasonable, available to everyone. And that is the new paradigm. If you watch the lecture I have in the beginning of the module, which is posted in the classroom, and you watch until the end, you will get this idea. We are talking about open source and available for everyone. And why is available? Because it's not because it's totally free, but it's very reasonable price. It's not anymore that only Apple, Microsoft, IBM can use this type of expensive technology. Anyone, any small business can actually take advantage of these services and build efficient customer service and progress as a business. And this is the cool stuff of the today AI, which is not this classical abstract, not reachable. Maybe at some point we will reach that concept of AI. We're talking about all this practical AI today, which is for everyone. Hello?
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Another piece that I didn't discuss is that integrating with other applications, like in my case, right? Well, for instance, you could do the speech to text, right? For instance, suppose that I cannot type, but I can say, I can answer my questions just by saying it, right? That's one thing. Yeah. Well, you need to discuss how would you enhance your application functionality by integrating other applications such as speech to text, text to speech, visual recognition. So here you have to be a little bit, what do you say, creative, right? So
and actually, if you go to GitHub, there is a ton of stuff posted there for free. Of course, you have to be prepared at minimum in order to get advantage of what is in GitHub. But as soon as you get this, let's say, introductory barrier, which is the aim of this 3-week assignment here in this class, you are already, let's say, jump this introduction barrier, and you can go and by yourself above and in deep in all this technology and take advantage of the open source, which is available open and free code in GitHub. I'm going to post one link, which I didn't post up to now because I don't want people to think that this is very complex stuff, but slowly we are going to introduce more stuff to get you more excited. And the thing is that we have the Thanksgiving in the middle of this week, but you understand, online classes run 24/7. We cannot, they are no holiday, no Saturday, no Sunday, no holiday. So of course, I want that everyone will enjoy family Thanksgiving, but we still have to work.
yeah. Well, I mean, that really takes some time. You need to take some time first to brainstorm what you're going to do before you actually sit down and do it.
So let's say the following. This was the first, we are going to do similar, almost identical demo next Tuesday. And you know, repetition is part of the learning. So you go as much as you can, and then perhaps you can attend or watch the next session, and you will get more or just this recording, you watch it again and you get more and more and more, because learning is this way. It's also repetition. You have to reread everything couple of times in order to understand some concept and some stuff we are doing. So if there are no more questions, we had 1.5 hour session, which is more than I programmed, and is good. Any other question?
Good evening, Professor. This is Yogi. Thanks for that wonderful demonstration. In the future, I would like to see if I can use one of the service call into the chatbot, if there is some example how to call a service.
I will post a link.
Okay. And also, like, I have one question. So I was like trying to see that for the same intent, intent 1 and intent 2, I have given the same example, like buy for the same, for both the intents. But I don't know like which example it would execute. What I did is that there are two intents. I have given the same example for both the intents. So when I type in that example, which intent is taken care? I couldn't be able to figure it out. Which order that example is taken?
Why, Yogi, this is Gopati, why would you do that? I mean, it's not necessary to have two intents, that mean the same thing. So if an intent is basically what you are intending to say by the sentences you type in or the sentences you utter. So, it's like saying what the sentences you are uttering are ambiguous, are going to be ambiguous. They could mean one of two different things. So defining two different intents for the same examples is the same as saying what I'm going to say now is going to be ambiguous.
One of the things I would do is, if there's, let's say, just for the sake of, just trying this out, I would try to give like a different message. I mean, it would be the same probably buy, but maybe, saying buy in a different way so that I exactly know which intent it did hit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It's just only like, I mean, when you're trying to type something and like, I mean, if it's not exactly the same as an example, so if there is a typo, I mean, I don't know, like the bot is going to interpret it as a...
That's right. So all of those examples should map to the same intent. You understand? So even if you're, making a spelling mistake or you're saying something in a different way, you want it all to mean the same thing. So intent is basically the one and only meaning, that can be attached to a whole bunch of statements. So you can say, bye or goodbye or see you or whatever, and the intent has to be one thing. Does it make sense?
Good. Yeah, that makes sense, Professor. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, but that's something to think about it, guys. Like you start working on it now, right? Write your questions down and bring them to the next session.
Well, there is also in the classroom, we have Q&A. We have plenty of forum to ask questions. Just do some work and ask questions. The worst thing you can do is hold on for days and not asking questions.
Yeah, that's what I said in there is a quote on one of the slides where it says the biggest mistake we can make is not asking for help. Just remember that one.
And Elena, I think you promised, so you are going to give us the JSON for this, the BMI chat.
Oh yeah, well, I'll give you the JSON, yes.
So thank you so much. I
Yes,
think it
you'll
could
have
be
it, yes.
great help.
Yes, and you can import it. You know that when you create a new skill, there is an option. There's
Right.
Yes, one of them is sample. Sample is basically the one that sort of like pre-built, and you could do that. Yeah, but one thing to keep in mind, there is a limit. You can have 5 skills, up to 5 skills in one service instance. Just remember that. So you would have to, if you reach 5, you would have to delete what you're not using. Well, you just back up. You export the JSON file, right? Then delete the skill. And if you need it back, you can always re-import. But you can have only 5. No more than 5.
5 you activate anytime. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, but you'll have it, sure. You have the slide, you have it. The BMI, it's complicated. So it's the logic is very complex. So, and what time zone you're in? I'm wondering what the time is going to be doing for people in a different time zone. How it's going to work.
No, I think it would help us to to get some idea and
Yes. But what I have in there, it's like the different picture is displayed based on the current time. But I'm on the East Coast. But I'm wondering if somebody who runs it on the West Coast will get the same result as me.
And probably one of the questions we would ask, where are you from, and then
yes,
add that to the time zone too.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason is because I was helping one of the guys with the load, right, for the last assignment. I loaded the data and my timestamp showed 7 a.m. But when the student opened it up later on, he saw 4 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. because that was his time. So I'm wondering how it's going to play out here. Well, I'll see.
Thank you all. I mean, it's a wonderful and interesting assignment this time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I see everyone is ready to go to other duty. We are going to stop the recording and wishing everyone